If you've ever opened a letter from the IRS and see the word penalty with a dollar amount next to it, you know that sinking feeling in your stomach. Penalties can pile up fast and make an already stressful tax situation even worse. But here's the good news, those penalties aren't always permanent. In fact, the IRS has programs that allow you to get some or even all of those penalties removed. It's called penalty abatement, and that's exactly what we're going to dive in today. If you've been hit with late filing or late payment penalties, you'll want to listen carefully because this episode could save you thousands of dollars. This is the IRS Problem Solver Podcast. I'm David J. Grigg, CPA. If you've got tax debt, payroll tax issues, or the IRS is coming after you, you're not alone. Each week, I share real strategies to stop collections, protect your business, and take control of your tax problems legally and effectively. Let's dive in. Let's start with the problem. The IRS uses penalties as a way to encourage compliance, but for taxpayers who fall behind, those penalties can feel like punishment. The most common penalties are failure to file penalty. If you don't file your taxes on time, this is the big one that they'll add. And it's usually the chunkiest of the two more common penalties. The second more common penalty is the failure to file penalty. If you don't pay what you owe on time, regardless of if you file, they'll add this penalty. Now, the way that these two penalties interact are unique, and there's weird calculations that go into it. But ordinarily, if you miss the filing deadline, that one's going to stack up first. And then the failure to pay penalty will continue to go. These penalties do cap out after a certain period of time, but the interest that stacks on top of the tax and the penalty, that doesn't ever stop. The third penalty that we see a lot is an accuracy related penalty. If there are mistakes on your tax return that result in a substantial underpayment, that will incur an accuracy related penalty. You have to make a very strong case to get that accuracy related penalty abated. And especially in the context of this, the accuracy related penalties do not qualify. It would have to fall under reasonable cause, which is something that we'll touch on, but we'll get more into detail in a future episode. So here's how quickly these penalties add up. Let's say you owe $5,000 and you missed the filing deadline. The IRS charges 5% per month, up to 25%. That's another $1,250 in penalties, and that's before adding interest. Now imagine being behind for multiple years. You can see how overwhelming it becomes. And the emotional impact is just as heavy. Clients tell me they feel hopeless, ashamed, even scared to open up their mail. That's why understanding penalty abatement is so important. It gives you a path forward. So, what exactly is penalty abatement? In plain English, it's the IRS agreeing to forgive or remove penalties. And there are two main ways that this can happen. First time penalty abatement, or FTA. This is the easiest one to get. If you've been compliant in the past, meaning you filed your taxes on time and didn't have penalties for the last 3 years, the IRS may forgive penalties for 1 year. Think of it as a get out of jail free card if you normally play by the rules but slipped up just this one time. The second one is reasonable cause abatement. And this applies if you had a legitimate reason for falling behind. The IRS defines reasonable cause as circumstances beyond your control. For example, a serious illness, a natural disaster, or even relying on incorrect advice from a tax professional. The key is that you acted responsibility, but something happened that made it impossible to file or pay on time. Let me share with you a real world example. A client came to me after missing her tax deadline because of a major medical emergency. Between hospital visits and recovery, filing taxes was the last thing on her mind. By the time she called up, the IRS had added thousands in penalties. We filed a request for penalty abatement, explained her situation clearly, and provided hospital records as proof. The IRS reviewed the case and removed the penalties. The relief on her face was priceless. She said, I can finally feel like I can breathe again. And that's just what penalty abatement can do. It doesn't just reduce the numbers, it gives you your peace of mind back. How do you actually request penalty abatement? If you're going for first time penalty abatement, sometimes all it takes is a phone call to the IRS, is all it takes. You explain your situation, they check your compliance history, and if you qualify, they can approve it right there over the phone. Now, if you're asking for reasonable cause abatement, it usually requires a written request. This is done using Form 843, where you explain your circumstances and include any documentation that supports your case. You must be current with your tax filings and payments before the IRS will even consider your request. They want to see that you're back on track. And while some people try to handle this on their own, working with a professional can make a huge difference. It's not just what you say, but how you say it that can convince the IRS to remove those penalties. Now let's talk about mistakes people make with penalty abatement. The first is just assuming you don't qualify. Many taxpayers never ask and they miss out on relief that they could have gotten. Second, not being current. If you haven't filed your tax return or set up a payment plan, the IRS is probably going to deny your request. Third, submitting a weak request, just saying, I couldn't pay without explanation or documentation usually won't work. The IRS needs facts, not just feelings. Avoid these pitfalls and your chances of success go way up. Penalties don't have to be permanent. Whether you qualify for first-time abatement or have a strong case for reasonable cause, there may be a way to reduce or even eliminate what you owe in penalties. If you're sitting there feeling crushed by IRS penalties, don't assume you're stuck. Take the first step. Check if you qualify or reach out for professional help. And if you need guidance, that's exactly what my team and I do. We help taxpayers just like you find the relief they deserve. Give us a call for a consultation, and let's find out if penalty abatement can give you a fresh start.